Welcome everybody to another episode of Wipe Like a Pro. I am very excited about this episode because I am standing next to my neighbor. His name is Don Estergard, and the fun story behind this episode is Don was a good friend of my dad, Willard Smucker, back in the late 70s and early 80s, when just about a mile that direction, my dad had the same issues that Don was having in his grass seed fields and needed to come up with a solution. That's when the weed wipers were invented. And Don, come to find out, bought the very first weed wiper 40 years ago from my dad. And then just recently this spring, he purchased a brand new weed wiper, a pump-fed 30-foot pull type. And exactly a week ago, we came out here and videoed them. They came out in this bent grass field and did some weed wiping, and you're gonna see some great results. And we're gonna talk today about weed wiping in grass seed. So for all of you farmers that are, maybe you're cattle people in Kentucky or Missouri or wherever, lots of you understand and know that your grass seed comes from Oregon. Our climate is very well suited for grass seed. A lot of that's raised right here in what's called the Willamette Valley. And so today we're gonna be talking about how we are able to, with a weed wiper, get those taller growing varieties of grass seed out of the varieties that you're looking for. So I'm gonna start off again by introducing, this is Don Estergard. Don, thank you for joining me today. Tell our listeners what variety of grass is this field that we're standing in? What do you call this?
We're standing in a creeping bentgrass field, and the use of creeping bentgrass is, this is the grass that goes on the putting greens of all the golf courses.
Wow.
And it's very fine, it's real low growing, it's hard to get started, but it does creep. And the thing that we like, we spring plant this, and then we have a real dilemma with weeds that want to come through the summer, but the weeds are usually bigger and taller, and we use a weed wiper, as you can see, that the bent's underneath, and the weed wiper goes over the top and is real selective. And we're having real problems with labor. We used to have a spot spraying crew that individually went through and either hoed it out or pulled it by hand, or in some cases wiped it with a stick, a hockey stick type thing, handheld thing. But this is where we're at, and just all the different grasses, the forage grasses that are used, of course, for forage for livestock feed. This process, anything planted in the spring, we have those summer annuals that come on that are really tough, and they go to seed, and with our certified seed program, it has to be close to perfect before we can sell it.
Right. You know, Don and I were talking about this. One interesting thing, and I'm gonna say a lot of you pasture guys or hay people that are dealing with things like Johnson grass or thistles in your pastures, you're really dealing with the same issue, especially Johnson grass. And the reason I want to make that association is, like you're seeing in this field behind us, you can see, and you'll see in the video as we're wiping this, you know, this creeping bentgrass is really low growing. So that would simulate like the grasses you're using in your pastures. And then of course that Johnson grass is higher. And like you said, there's really no selective herbicide that you have where you can say, kill this grass, but don't kill this grass. There's just no way of doing it. And it becomes very, very labor intensive to do this. One interesting thing, we did send a quick math on this. This is an 80-acre field of bent grass. And we figured that if you sent a spot spraying crew out where you just went through and you can tell which is obviously there, two things that are negatives on that. When you spot spray this particular weed here, you're gonna kill that bent grass right below it too, where wiping, you're only killing, in this case, the ryegrass that he's getting rid of with a weed wiper. And so not only are you using more material, but the cost to send a spot sprayer crew, Don, how many guys would you typically put on a crew?
Or you have 10.
Okay, so,
sure.
so 10 people that are hard to find right now that are on a spot spraying crew, and it takes, how many days do you think it take to spot spray this field with as bad, you know, the weeds that you see here?
At least 3.
Okay, so three days, 10 people. We did some quick math. That's gonna be on this 80-acre field about $60 per acre. Okay, so let's compare that now to a weed wiper. 30-foot weed wiper, your cost of the unit is around $5,000. You can have different models, and let's say your initial cost of the equipment. Then you look at, you only have one guy to operate that. This field was done in 1 day, less than a day, because he had 30 feet wide, was able to go through at about 5 to 7 miles an hour. And then of course your cost per acre, keep in mind you're using a lot less material. I'm gonna guess, Don, just by looking at this field, he probably filled up that tank once, and I doubt if he used a full tank. Do you remember if he used a full tank?
He didn't use a full tank.
Okay, so I'm gonna say probably 8 to 10 gallons of mixed Roundup is about all he used. Don, I don't know what kind of rates. I know we typically tell people between 20 and 33% Roundup. Is that about where you guys were at?
Yes.
Okay, so the key is getting a stronger rate of Roundup and then going through here, and again, you're gonna see some photos right now of the results side by side in the videos here as you're watching here before and after. It's just really interesting how just a little bit of, you know, wiping that sponge right on that taller grass, how it will go down to the roots and get a kill. So now we're gonna actually look at kind of side by side. Again, you see this creeping bentgrass in the bottom. This is annual ryegrass here that has not been weed wiped. And of course, this was a week ago. You see the dead annual there. Again, like we've talked about before, one of the beautiful things about weed wiping is how much material you actually get from the sponge to that plant. It literally takes just that second of getting it on there. And what we recommend too is that you use a good surfactant in your mix, because what that surfactant's gonna do, even though I'm only maybe getting 2/3 of this plant, that surfactant is gonna drive that Roundup down into the roots of that weed and get you a good kill like this. So again, you can see behind us all the ones that we were able to get with the field. This one was not weed wiped. And if you can see this too here, this is a real good example of what happens when this seeds out. And Don, one of the questions I have for you, just to explain to our growers that may not understand the process of seed cleaning, give us, tell us what happens during harvest after you come in here and harvest this, because this will be harvested next summer. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So give us the process and give us an idea of what happens when you're separating the weed seeds, if there's any, from the good seeds. What do you guys do in your cleaning process?
Well, the process is, the creeping bentgrass is a very, very small seed. Mm-hmm. And you basically can't have any weeds or other varieties of grass in anything that's going to go on the putting green, because they spend thousands and thousands of dollars preparing those greens, and they don't want to plant it with any weeds at all.
Correct.
So it's very important for us to get a product that has no weeds and no crop in it other than creeping bentgrass. So we have our own seed cleaning plant, and we combine this with a regular grain combine, and then that product goes to the warehouse, and we do what we scalp it first thing, and that is just take maybe the short straws, the bigger seeds that are weeds, and then we go through a process of run it through about 6 different machines. Wow. Has air and screening, and if it's a rough seed coat on a weed seed, it'll catch it and take it out. So we end up with a product that has to be 0 weed in crop. It's very important.
Yeah. So So another cost that would, if you chose not to do anything about these weeds, it would be a very lengthy process. You'd have to run that seed through your cleaner multiple times to try to get this, even if it was even possible. So it's really important that you get rid of these, correct?
Well, it needs to be cleaned before you take it to the warehouse
Gotcha.
to have it, because some of those weeds will sneak through and you're going to have it in the test. I mean, it has to be certified seed, and that's a department that's ran by the state of Oregon.
Right.
And they follow up with everything, and we have to have it tested about 3 times before it ever makes the blue tag, is what they call it, the 00 weeds crop.
Right. Excellent. Well, Don, it's been a pleasure. I want to thank you again for not only being a customer, but for being a customer that's had the original weed wiper 40 years ago, which is amazing. I appreciate that. And then for those of you watching, I know you're not all farmers. Many of you love to golf. So next time you're on there and you're putting on the green, you can thank Mr. Estergard here for doing such a good job of getting rid of these weeds. Otherwise, can you imagine it's gonna take if you're trying to putt through and that you had a weed like this in that putting green? I don't think you'd be golfing at that place much longer. So, Mr. Don, thank you so much for your time. Again, we appreciate all of you watching these Wipe Like a Pro series. Have a wonderful day, and goodbye from Oregon.